Hey man, when a woman walks away from a man, it always looks like freedom at first. She convinces herself she made the right choice. She posts the smiles, tells her friends she's finally happy, and projects an image of strength. To you, it might feel like she's moved on effortlessly, but beneath that performance, the female mind is fighting a quiet war she will never admit to, because leaving is never free. It always comes with a cost that begins small, hidden in the shadows of her pride, and grows heavier with time. She may not see it immediately, but it lingers, and the deeper it burrows, the more it changes how she sees herself, how she views men, and how she remembers you. This is the side of her decision no one talks about, the unspoken price of leaving. At first, she clings to her emotions to justify it. If she felt bored, she calls it outgrowing you. If she felt tempted by someone else, she reframes it as finding herself. But psychology tells us, emotions are temporary states, not permanent truths. And when a woman makes permanent decisions based on temporary emotions, regret doesn't hit her like a thunderclap. It creeps in like a slow, suffocating fog. She'll tell herself she's fine, she'll drown in distractions, she'll rush into new experiences, but the mind always circles back. When the highs fade and the noise settles, she remembers the stability she once had. And that's when the first cracks form. Not because of what you did wrong, but because of what she gave up in a moment of emotional blindness. One of the earliest costs she pays is in her identity. When she was with you, she wasn't just living her life, she was building part of her story around you. Your routines, your presence, your influence shaped her world. By leaving, she doesn't just lose you, she loses the version of herself that existed with you. Suddenly, the little rituals you created are gone, the comfort she took for granted is absent, and the part of her that felt anchored by your presence disappears. She may pretend this is empowerment, but it often feels like emptiness, because in the rush to leave, she never considered that she was also leaving behind a piece of herself she may never get back. And that emptiness becomes a silent weight she carries into every new relationship, no matter how much she hides it. Then comes the social cost. The way her world of validation begins to shift. In the beginning, her friends may cheer her on, telling her she deserves better, celebrating her independence. But over time, that support fades. Friends get tired of listening to stories about new men and new disappointments. Family members quietly question her choices, wondering why she walked away from someone who was consistent and real. Even if no one says it out loud, she feels it in the silence, in the sideways glances, in the subtle tone of conversations. For women, social validation is oxygen, and when that oxygen thins out, regret begins to suffocate her pride. The respect she thought she'd gained for choosing herself slowly turns into doubt, because people begin to remember not her freedom, but the man she let go of. The deepest cost, however, is psychological. Every time a woman gives herself to a man, she forms an emotional bond. Science calls it pair bonding, psychology calls it attachment, but it is very real. When she leaves, that bond doesn't vanish, it tears, and every tear leaves a scar. The more time she does it, the harder it becomes for her to truly connect again. She may laugh louder, post bolder, or date faster, but deep inside, she feels less each time. And when she looks back, she realizes that with you, she felt more than she has since. That realization is brutal, because she knows she can never fully reclaim it. The cost of leaving isn't just losing you, it's losing her own capacity to love as deeply as she once did. After the initial rush of freedom fades, she begins to notice how quiet the world feels without you. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a missing anchor. She no longer has your presence to lean on, your voice to steady her, your energy to fill the spaces she never realized were filled. At first, she distracts herself with noise, friends, new experiences, maybe even another man, but distractions always fade, and when they do, she feels the hollowness underneath. This is the stage she will never admit publicly, because it contradicts the story she told herself and everyone else. She left to feel more alive, but instead she finds herself restless, irritable, and strangely unsatisfied. That's the first whisper of the cost. The realization that your absence isn't just emptiness, it's a void. As time passes, the cost begins showing up in her new relationships. At first, she thought she could replace you, that another man would bring excitement where you supposedly failed. But new men rarely measure up in the ways that matter. They might provide novelty, but not stability. They might bring passion, but not safety. And worst of all, she can't stop comparing them to you, even when she pretends not to. Every laugh, every argument, every moment of intimacy reminds her of what she used to have. Psychology calls this contrast effect, when the mind measures the present against the past. And in this contrast, she sees it clearly. Leaving wasn't just walking away from you, it was trading something genuine for something shallow. That realization eats at her quietly, because she knows she can't reverse it without admitting she was wrong. Regret also creeps in during the smallest, most unexpected moments. She might be sitting alone at night when a memory floods her out of nowhere, the way you looked at her, the way you made her feel safe, the way you didn't fold under her moods. These memories sting more than she'll ever admit, because they come without warning, and they remind her that her narrative doesn't match reality. She can tell herself she left for the better, but her subconscious keeps pulling her back to what she abandoned. And this is where the unspoken cost grows heavier. She realizes that no matter how much she tries to erase you, your presence lingers like an imprint on her soul. You're not just a past chapter, you're a ghost that won't leave her alone, even when she pretends you never mattered. Another hidden cost is the erosion of her ability to trust herself. Women thrive on believing their intuition is flawless, that their emotions are a compass, pointing them in the right direction. But when she looks back and sees that her decision to leave only brought emptiness, instability, or disappointment, she begins to doubt that compass. That doubt spreads into every corner of her life. She questions her choices, her relationships, even her identity, and nothing is more terrifying for a woman than realizing she cannot trust herself. You may think she left and forgot about you, but part of her battle is not with you, it's with her own reflection. Because leaving you wasn't just a rejection of you, it was a gamble with her own judgment. And every day she feels that gamble slipping, she pays the cost in self-doubt. But the most brutal cost comes when she sees you thriving without her. When you don't beg, don't chase, don't crumble, but instead build, grow and rise higher. Her pride takes the hardest hit. She left thinking you'd suffer, that your silence would turn into desperation. Instead, she sees a man standing taller, living fuller, radiating a strength she no longer has access to. And that's when the cost becomes unbearable. Because now it's not just about losing you, it's about losing the version of herself that only existed with you. She realizes she didn't just leave a man, she left the mirror that reflected her best self. And when that truth hits, it's a wound she can't show anyone, because admitting it would mean admitting that leaving you wasn't freedom, it was self-destruction, dressed as empowerment. Denial is her first line of defense. She'll tell herself and everyone around her that she's happier, freer, stronger. She'll lean on social media, carefully curating an image of a woman who made the right choice. But the more she posts, the more the cracks show, because behind every filtered photo is a void she can't fill. Behind every "I'm fine" is a whisper of doubt she can't silence. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance, the mental friction between what she wants to believe and what she actually feels. And the longer she carries this dissonance, the heavier it weighs on her. She might fool the world, but she cannot fool her subconscious. And that is where the cost grows sharpest, because it's not just about losing you, it's about losing the harmony between who she claims to be and what she really feels inside. Her new life, which seemed exciting in the beginning, gradually starts to feel shallow. The parties, the new men, the endless freedom, none of it brings the same grounding stability she once had, because what she mistook for control was actually chaos dressed up as choice. She thought leaving would mean stepping into something better, but instead, she stepped into a cycle of chasing highs and running from lows, and slowly she realizes something devastating. Stability was never boring, it was rare. Consistency wasn't weakness, it was strength. The very things she resented in you are the very things she now misses in every other man. That realization is part of the cost, because by the time she understands it, she knows she cannot go back without admitting she was wrong. And for most women, that admission is harder than living with regret. Your silence becomes the loudest reminder of what she lost. When she left, she expected you to reach out, to argue, to fight for her. That's how most men react, desperate to hold on. But when you don't, when you simply let her go, she feels a discomfort she can't explain, because silence is not absence, it's presence amplified. It forces her to sit with her decision, to wonder why you haven't cracked, why you haven't chased, why you seem stronger without her. That silence grows in her mind, turning into a question that gnaws at her. Did he ever need me as much as I thought? Was I really the center of his world? And the longer you remain calm and unshaken, the more she realizes she lost not just a man, but a kind of strength she may never find again. As months pass, the cost of leaving begins to reveal itself in the way she views intimacy. At first, she believed she could easily find what she had with you in someone else, but intimacy without history feels empty. A new man may bring excitement, but he doesn't know her quirks, her fears, her triggers, the way you did. With you, she didn't have to explain, she was understood. With others, she has to start over, rebuilding trust from the ground up, all while carrying the ghost of what she lost. This makes her restless, never fully satisfied, because deep down she knows true intimacy is not built overnight, and every failed attempt at recreating it reinforces the truth she avoids. She didn't just leave you, she left behind the depth of connection most people spend a lifetime searching for. The final unspoken cost is her inability to ever see you the same way again. Even if she returns, even if she reaches out, she knows the power dynamic has shifted forever. You now hold something she cannot touch: clarity. You saw through her illusion, survived her absence, and proved she wasn't your downfall. That changes everything, because attraction is rooted in respect, and respect is born from strength. By leaving, she gave you the chance to show strength she never expected, and now she has to live with the fact that she underestimated you. That realization is both painful and magnetic. It draws her back in curiosity, but it also shames her for ever walking away. And that is the ultimate cost, not just losing you, but realizing she misjudged the very man who had the strength she secretly always wanted. When she wakes up in the morning, the cost is there in subtle ways she can't fully name. Maybe it's the way the bed feels colder than it used to, or how her coffee doesn't taste the same without someone to share quiet mornings with. These moments seem trivial, but they build up like a slow storm, because what she begins to miss isn't just you, it's the rhythm of life she had with you. Humans crave patterns, and when those patterns are broken, the mind naturally longs for them again. That's why she finds herself reminiscing about things she once took for granted. The routine, the inside jokes, even the mundane daily check-ins. All the things she thought were boring now feel like treasures she abandoned too quickly. And every reminder adds weight to the unspoken cost, making her wonder how she ever convinced herself walking away was strength. The comparisons she makes between you and the men that come after are brutal, even if she pretends otherwise. She may never admit it aloud, but every interaction is measured against the memory of you. She notices how other men don't listen the way you did, don't carry themselves with the same calm, don't provide the same emotional grounding. Even when they seem better on the surface, something always feels off, because surface-level attraction can't replace the depth she once felt. This is where regret digs its deepest trenches, because she realizes she's searching for you in every man, even as she tells herself she's moved on. And the cruelest part? No one else will ever be you, and she knows it. The cost then becomes living with a standard she can't lower and a reality she can't undo. Her emotions start betraying her in ways she can't control. Maybe she catches herself checking your social media, looking for signs of how you're doing. Maybe she hears your name in passing and feels a pang she can't explain. Maybe she even dreams about you, her subconscious pulling her back to what her pride won't let her acknowledge. These moments feel like accidents, but they're not. They're the mind's way of reminding her that something unresolved lingers, and the harder she tries to suppress it, the stronger it comes back. This is the paradox of memory. You can choose to walk away physically, but you cannot command the heart to forget. And deep down, she knows she didn't just lose a man, she lost a part of herself that existed only in your presence. That realization eats at her silently, and it never truly goes away. Another hidden cost comes when she sees you happy without her. Maybe you're building your career, leveling up physically, or simply smiling in photos she wasn't expecting to see. That image hits harder than anything else because it shatters the fantasy she created in her head that you'd crumble without her. She expected tears, desperation, weakness. Instead, she sees resilience, strength, and even growth. And nothing bruises a woman's ego more than realizing she wasn't your downfall, but your catalyst. In that moment, she understands she didn't break you, she revealed you. She exposed a strength that thrives even in absence, and that terrifies her. Because now she must live with the knowledge that she let go of a man who not only survived without her, but became even more untouchable. That is the kind of cost she will never put into words, but it's the one that haunts her the most. In time, the cost of leaving you doesn't just shape her view of you, it reshapes her view of men altogether. She starts to believe that all men will disappoint, that all connections are temporary, because she projects her regret onto every future relationship. She tells herself men can't be trusted, when in reality the truth is harder. She can't be trusted with a good man. This projection becomes a cycle where she sabotages even potential happiness because the guilt of losing you still lingers under the surface. And here lies the most devastating truth. The cost of leaving you isn't just the loss of what you had, it's the permanent shift in how she sees herself. She knows she mishandled something rare, and that knowledge quietly chips away at her confidence, her trust, and her peace of mind. It's a cost that doesn't just end, it compounds with time. As the months turn into years, the cost of leaving doesn't shrink, it compounds. In the beginning, she can tell herself it was just timing, or that she'll find someone better. But as time stretches on, reality begins to chip away at those comforting illusions. She watches friends settle into stable relationships. She sees couples building lives together, and she can't help but notice that the men she left you for never offered her the same foundation. The longer she goes without someone who brings her the stability you did, the more she realizes that the foundation she once had with you was not ordinary. It was rare, and rare things once discarded don't come back. That realization hardens inside her like stone, leaving her with the gnawing sense that she didn't just lose a relationship, she lost the best chance she had at something real. Her pride, however, keeps her locked in denial. Pride whispers that admitting regret is weakness, that reaching back out would expose her mistake, that acknowledging her loss would strip away the facade she's carefully built, so she keeps pretending, playing the role of the woman who moved on. But pride is a prison, and the longer she stays inside it, the more she suffocates under the weight of her own unspoken truth. She'll laugh in public, but cry in silence. She'll smile for others, but ache when she's alone, because pride won't let her release the pain in any other way. This is why her cost is unspoken. It's hidden behind layers of performance, buried under masks of confidence, but masks eventually crack, and when they do, the truth spills out in ways she can no longer ignore. Your absence becomes a mirror she can't escape. At first, she thought losing you would just mean losing your presence in her daily life, but what she didn't expect was how your absence would expose the truth about herself. Without you, she sees her flaws more clearly. Without you, she feels the instability of her choices. Without you, she realizes how much of her sense of security was built on the foundation you provided. That's the cruelest irony. You're no longer there, yet you are the one shaping her reality more than anyone else. Because absence is not emptiness, it is reflection. And every time she feels that reflection pressing against her, she remembers that leaving you wasn't just about walking away from a man, it was about walking away from the part of herself that only existed in your presence. Even her attempts at distraction betray her. She might dive into work, new relationships, or even reckless habits to drown out the feelings she doesn't want to face. But none of these distractions hold for long, because the human mind has a way of circling back to unfinished business, and leaving you was unfinished. It wasn't closure, it was escape. She didn't resolve anything, she just ran, and that running becomes exhausting after a while. Every failed relationship, every lonely night, every quiet realization that this still doesn't feel right brings her back to the truth she keeps avoiding. The cost of leaving you isn't just about losing what she had, it's about constantly running from the shadow of what she abandoned, and no matter how far she runs, that shadow always keeps pace. The ultimate cost is this: she cannot truly erase you. You live in her memory, her subconscious, her regrets, her comparisons. Even if she never speaks your name again, even if she pretends you don't exist, you remain a part of her story. She cannot edit out. And while you move on, grow, and build a life rooted in clarity, she is left replaying what-ifs and maybes in her mind. That is the price women rarely anticipate when they walk away, the permanence of regret. Because love is not something you can discard and recover at will. Once it's gone, it carves itself into you, leaving behind scars that never fully heal. And for her, those scars will whisper your name long after she's tried to forget. That's why leaving you wasn't liberation. It was the beginning of a lifelong reminder that some choices can't be undone. As she grows older, the unspoken cost begins to feel heavier because time has a way of amplifying regret. When she's young, she tells herself she has endless chances, that there will always be another man, another beginning. But as years pass, that illusion crumbles, the pool of opportunity shrinks, the novelty wears thin, and the men she once overlooked now seem rare. She begins to notice that men with your level of strength, stability, and clarity aren't lining up at every corner. Instead, she's surrounded by men who either lack direction or only want fleeting attention. This reality forces her to look back on you with a sharper sense of loss, because time has made her realize that what she had wasn't common, it was exceptional. And nothing makes regret sting more than recognizing rarity only after it's gone. Regret also ages with her in another way. It turns into bitterness. At first, she tries to mask it with laughter, with distractions, with a curated sense of freedom. But bitterness creeps in slowly, like poison in the bloodstream. She grows irritable with men who can't meet her standards, impatient with relationships that don't feel fulfilling, and quietly resentful of herself for having let go of something stable. This bitterness leaks into her interactions, making her harder to love, harder to connect with, harder to satisfy. And though she'll never say it aloud, the bitterness is not just about men, it's about you. It's about what she lost, what she failed to appreciate, and what she now knows she cannot replace. That bitterness becomes part of her identity, and it is the clearest evidence of the cost she carries. One of the cruelest truths about the cost of leaving you is that she often realizes it too late. By the time she sees the depth of what she abandoned, you're no longer available. You've moved on, grown stronger, maybe even built a new life with someone else. And that's when the pain doubles, because not only has she lost you, she has to witness you giving your strength, stability, and loyalty to another woman. That sight burns deeper than anything else, because it makes her loss undeniable. It's no longer hypothetical, it's real. You are no longer hers, and the door she thought she could always come back to is closed. And in that moment, the full weight of the cost comes crashing down. She realizes that the man she once thought would always be there is gone, and her pride can't reverse it. Her nights become the heaviest, because it's at night, when distractions fade and silence takes over, that regret has the loudest voice. She replays conversations in her mind, remembers the way you once looked at her, and wonders how she ever thought she could do better. The loneliness feels sharper in these hours because the facade she presents to the world during the day falls away. There are no filters, no friends, no noise, just the raw truth of what she lost. And while she might tell herself she doesn't care, her body betrays her. The tightness in her chest, the tears she won't let fall, the restless tossing in bed. These are all the physical manifestations of a regret she can't silence. And it's in those quiet hours that the unspoken cost feels unbearable. In the end, the true cost of leaving you isn't just about the relationship, it's about the life she could have built with you. She gave up more than love. She gave up the foundation, the vision, the future that only existed by your side. And when she finally realizes that, it's not just you she misses, it's the version of herself she only got to be when she was with you. That's the most devastating cost of all, because it means her regret isn't temporary, it's permanent. You became a part of her identity, a chapter she cannot rewrite, and a standard she cannot lower. And even if she moves on, even if she builds a new life, that part of her will always ache for what she let slip away. That's why leaving you wasn't just a mistake, it was the defining loss of her life. As more time passes, she begins to realize that the cost isn't just emotional, it's existential. Her choices have shaped her reality, and in leaving you, she set herself on a path that feels increasingly unstable. When life throws challenges her way, she remembers how you used to handle them with calm and leadership. And now, facing them alone, or with men who lack your presence, she feels the gap more intensely. That gap is not just about missing companionship, it's about missing alignment, missing a sense of direction that she once received by being in your orbit. This creates a subtle but persistent sense of unease, a reminder that she once had someone who steadied her storms but let him slip away. The unspoken cost deepens because now it's not just about regret, it's about survival in a world that feels harder without your steadiness. She also begins to feel the cost socially. When she left, she may have thought others would admire her for her boldness, her independence, her courage to move on, but over time, those same people stop caring. Friends have their own lives, their own problems, and her story no longer earns her sympathy or attention. The world moves on, but her regret doesn't. That's when she realizes that no one is invested in her decision the way she is, and that the consequences of leaving you belong to her alone. This loneliness isn't just about missing you, it's about realizing she's bearing the weight of her choice in isolation, with no audience to validate her. That's the brutal truth of her cost. While she thought she was winning approval, all she really earned was silence from the outside world, and silence from you. Her cost also becomes clear in the way she perceives her own femininity. When she was with you, she felt grounded, radiant, like she could lean into her softness because you carried the strength. But after leaving, she finds herself hardening, becoming more defensive, more guarded. Without a man to balance her, she is forced to carry both roles, protector and nurturer, and it wears her down. She might not admit this, but deep down she knows she was more feminine, more at peace, more herself when she was by your side, and now she struggles to reclaim that feeling because it was tied to your presence. That's the hidden cost most women never calculate. Leaving a man who brings out her best version also means leaving behind that best version of herself. And once she sees that, the ache never goes away. Another layer of the cost reveals itself when she sees you unaffected. For many women, the expectation after leaving is that the man will chase, crumble, or at least show signs of devastation. But when you don't, when you carry yourself with dignity, purpose, and calm, it unsettles her in ways she can't explain, because your strength without her makes her question her own value. She wonders if she mattered as much as she believed. She questions if you were truly as dependent on her as she thought, and the more she sees you thriving, the more she feels the sting of insignificance. That's the paradox. She left to feel important, but your resilience makes her feel disposable. And that realization is perhaps the cruelest cost of all, understanding that her absence didn't break you, but her choice broke her own illusion. In her quieter reflections, she starts to confront the hardest truth, that loyalty and depth are not infinite opportunities. She thought she could leave and still find another man with your qualities, that stability and strength were abundant in the world, but reality shows her otherwise. She learns, often painfully, that the men she meets are either uninterested in depth or incapable of providing it. And while she cycles through connections that feel shallow or transactional, the memory of you grows sharper. You become not just a man she lost, but a benchmark against which every future relationship is measured, and none measure up. This turns her cost into a life sentence of comparison, where every smile feels forced, every touch feels incomplete, and every promise feels fragile compared to what she once had with you. That's when she realizes the unspoken cost isn't temporary, it's forever. By the time she reaches new stages of life, the illusions she clung to begin collapsing one by one. She thought excitement could replace stability, until excitement burned out. She thought novelty could fill the void until novelty lost its shine. She thought she could rewrite the past until reality reminded her that time only moves in one direction. This collapse of illusions is brutal, because it forces her to look at her life with sober eyes. And when she does, the truth is unavoidable. Leaving you wasn't liberation, it was self-sabotage. It's not that you were perfect, it's that you were real, consistent, and present. And those qualities, once taken for granted, reveal themselves as the rarest gifts of all. That's when regret stops being a background whisper and starts becoming a loud, unrelenting voice in her mind. This regret doesn't stay confined to the memory of you, it infects her new relationships. Every time she meets someone new, the same cycle repeats. She projects her hopes onto them, builds fantasies in her mind, and chases the thrill of fresh beginnings. But when the flaws appear, when reality sets in, she feels the sting all over again. And this time it's worse, because she knows she once had a man who could handle her storms and still remain grounded. This makes her resentful, impatient, and restless with every new partner. And the tragic irony is this: her inability to move on gracefully only widens the gap between what she lost and what she settles for. Every new disappointment isn't just about the present, it's a reminder of the past, of the man she left, of the stability she can't recreate. Over time, she begins to notice how your silence has transformed into something powerful. It's no longer just the absence of communication, it's a statement. By refusing to chase, beg, or justify, you've shown her a level of strength that words could never convey. And this unsettles her more than any argument could have, because while she runs from the truth, your silence forces her to face it. It tells her that you don't need her validation, you don't need her explanation, you don't even need her presence to define your worth. And in a world where most men crumble at the threat of abandonment, your ability to remain firm sets you apart. That realization cuts deep, because it makes her confront the possibility that you are the rarest kind of man, the kind she'll never find again. Eventually, the unspoken cost shows up in her sense of identity. She begins to question who she is, not just in relationships, but in life. Because walking away from you wasn't just about rejecting a man, it was about rejecting the version of herself that existed with you. That version may have been softer, calmer, more feminine, more secure. Without you, she's forced into roles she never wanted to play, hardening herself against the world, carrying weights she once trusted you to hold. And as she compares who she was with you to who she is now, the contrast becomes painful. She realizes she didn't just lose love, she lost alignment with the version of herself she liked most. That's a cost she never anticipated, but one she'll carry long after the memory of you stops being fresh. The final collapse comes when she realizes that time will not grant her another chance. There's a window in life where mistakes can be corrected, where people can circle back, where pride can be swallowed. But beyond that window, opportunities vanish. She begins to see that you've outgrown her, that you've stepped into a life where her presence no longer fits. Maybe you've built a business, a purpose, or even a family that doesn't include her. And that's when the weight of her choice comes crashing down. The cost isn't just losing you, it's losing the future she could have had with you. And no matter how much she pretends otherwise, she knows deep down that her decision wasn't just a mistake, it was the moment that defined the rest of her life. That's why the cost of leaving you is unspoken, because admitting it would mean admitting she threw away her greatest chance at something real. As regret matures, it twists into a quiet obsession. She might never admit it aloud, but you remain a recurring thought in her mind. Not every day, but often enough that you never truly disappear. It could be something as small as a song playing in a cafe, or the way another man phrases a sentence that reminds her of you. These small triggers create waves of memory, each one pulling her back into the world she walked away from. Over time, she finds herself caught in a loop, wondering where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. It's not love in the way it once was, it's something more haunting. It's the realization that she let go of something she can never fully replace, and the permanence of that thought makes her long for your presence, even while pretending you mean nothing. Her pride, however, locks her in silence. She could reach out, test the waters, or at least acknowledge her mistake. But pride won't let her. Pride whispers that she must protect her image, that admitting regret would shatter the story she's told herself and others. So she says nothing, even as she aches inside. This silence becomes its own kind of punishment, because every day she doesn't speak, the gap between you grows wider, and in that widening gap, she feels the weight of her own choice pressing down harder and harder. That's why the cost of leaving you is unspoken. It's not just about what she lost, it's about the prison she built around herself. A prison guarded by her own pride, and in that prison, she suffers in silence while the world assumes she's fine. At the same time, she secretly hopes for your validation. Even if she never admits it, she craves the reassurance that she still matters to you. Maybe she stalks your social media, waiting for a sign that you think of her. Maybe she asks mutual friends about you, pretending it's casual. Maybe she even tries to provoke a reaction by flaunting her happiness online. But deep down, what she wants is simple, to know she still lives in your mind, the way you live in hers. And when she gets nothing, no reaction, no attention, no slip in your frame, it drives her mad. Because silence is not just absence, it's rejection. And rejection from a man she once thought she controlled is a wound her ego can't easily heal. This obsession often shows itself indirectly. She might criticize men who remind her of you, or constantly bring up your name in passing, or overreact when someone mentions you. These are all defense mechanisms, her way of masking how much space you still occupy in her heart. The more she tries to downplay you, the more obvious it becomes that you still affect her. That's because unspoken costs don't just disappear, they resurface in behaviors, in tone, in choices that seem unrelated but always circle back. And every time she overreacts, every time she tries too hard to seem indifferent, she confirms to herself what she already knows. She hasn't truly moved on. You remain a part of her, and no amount of pretending can erase that. Eventually, she's forced to face a truth she's been avoiding. She misses not just you, but the man you became after her. Because your growth without her is undeniable. While she spiraled in regret and repetition, you built a stronger, clearer, more disciplined version of yourself. And the man she remembers is no longer the man you are. He's better, sharper, more untouchable. This realization is devastating because it means that even if she returned, she wouldn't get back what she lost. She would get a man who has outgrown her. And that truth makes the cost unbearable because it's not just about losing you once, it's about losing you permanently, in every form, in every future. That's the kind of loss that doesn't fade with time. It grows sharper with every reminder of who you've become without her. By the time she reaches the final stages of her journey, the unspoken cost of leaving you becomes less about romance and more about legacy. She begins to wonder how she will be remembered, what her choices have built, what kind of story her life tells. And in that reflection, your image inevitably returns. You were not just a man she dated. You were the fork in the road, the moment where her life could have gone in one of two directions. The life she chose may have been full of temporary thrills, but when measured against the life she could have had with you, it feels shallow. This realization is profound because it forces her to confront the truth. Her decision wasn't just about a relationship, it was about the entire trajectory of her future, and that trajectory now feels misaligned with what her soul truly craves. At this stage, even her memories become weapons against her. What once brought comfort now brings pain. When she recalls your laugh, your touch, or your presence, those memories don't soothe her, they sting, because they remind her of what she had and what she chose to throw away. Nostalgia becomes bittersweet, leaning more bitter than sweet, because it carries the weight of irreversibility. She can't go back, she can't undo, she can't rewrite the past, and in those quiet moments of memory, she finally sees the full cost of her choice. It's not just regret, it's the haunting awareness that some doors, once closed, never open again. That permanence is what breaks her, not the moment of leaving, but the reality that there is no true return. For you, this awareness is power, because it proves a truth most men don't realize until it's too late. You don't need to punish her. You don't need to beg her. You don't need to explain yourself. Life itself will handle that. Time will expose the cost of her decisions far more brutally than you ever could. And while she carries the weight of regret, you carry the freedom of growth. That is why silence is your greatest ally. It turns her loss into a mirror she can't escape, while allowing you to build a reality that leaves her behind. The cost of leaving you, then, is not something you ever have to force. It's something she inevitably discovers on her own. The final irony is this: she may never tell you any of this. She may never admit the regret, never apologize, never show the depth of her pain. But the signs will always be there in her tone, in her eyes, in the way she reacts when your name comes up. And you don't need to hear her say it to know it's true, because actions reveal what words conceal, and her actions, no matter how carefully masked, will always betray the truth, that leaving you was not the victory she thought it was, but the wound she will carry for the rest of her life. That's why the cost is unspoken, not because it isn't real, but because it's too painful for her to put into words. And so the unspoken cost of leaving you becomes the final chapter of her story with you, a chapter she reads in silence, while you've already moved on to write new ones. She thought leaving you was power, but in reality, it was surrender. She thought freedom was walking away, but true freedom was always in staying with a man who gave her stability and truth. Her loss becomes her teacher, her silence becomes her confession, and her regret becomes her prison. Meanwhile, you continue forward, unshaken, building a life rooted in strength, clarity, and vision. And that is the ultimate lesson men must learn. You never need to fight to prove your value. A woman who leaves will eventually pay the cost of her decision, not because you forced it, but because reality always collects its debt.